Hi, my name's Tony Seeley. I'm a social justice arts practitioner and I'm here today to interview some Windrush elders as part of one of the projects that I've been commissioned for Lambeth to do on Windrush Day. So why don't you come with me and we're going to go and meet some of these people, find out a little bit about their lives, what they've been up to, what's their experiences about Windrush, how they've coped throughout the pandemic, and what's the legacy that they want to leave behind for Windrush generation here in Lambeth. Let's go and see. Good afternoon, Simeon.
Good afternoon, Tony. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very important occasion. I am part of the Windrush Compensation Committee, which works in Lambeth Town Hall, organised by some of the councillors. And we were brought together because very few people were actually claiming the compensation and making any applications. So we had a great demand for clarity. In relation to my background, I've been involved in community regeneration for about 32 years. My mother came in when I was 9 months old, and my father left before I was born. It was strange because when I arrived, my mother said, "Don't speak Jamaican, speak English." So as a child growing up, you were encouraged to become more English than English. Sadly, as I was growing up, I was an apprentice, and I remember they used to call me Blackie. The foreman would actually call me Darkie and Nigger and all kind of names. No repercussions for him. And a lot of black young men like myself who were trying to get training to improve their job prospects went through 10, 15 years of being subjected to very negative comments.
So what would you say then has been the highs and the lows of your life here?
Well, I think that coming from a Windrush family, my grandfather, Robert Grosset, came to England in the 40s, in the Windrush period. He was here for some time, and he sent for my father. When we came to England, we lived in a house with 10 people, in a 4-bedroom house in Tooting. And so that was a very difficult time because we was crammed on top of each other. That went on for many years. I was told at school that I wasn't expected to speak very well, and I couldn't be very bright because I was black. When I used to do my math classes, the teacher would say I cheated. I must have cheated because how do you know these things? Almost like, do you have education in Jamaica? It stayed with me for a lot of years where I had lacking in confidence. Most of the time I was told I spoke so much I'd never get anywhere in life. Unfortunately for them, that's one of the things that helped me. The highest point in my life is I worked in the youth and community service for a long time, and I found myself working in places like Venn Street, Clapham, in Mitesfield, which is down in Brixton, and you found a lot of young people there who they'd never been out of Lambeth. They'd never been out, and I was given the job as a deputy manager for ILIA in a London Education Authority, and I was able to take young people out of London to the seaside, to different places, and I suppose that was probably one of the most rewarding times to show young people that there are other things that they could aspire to. I then went on to work in the regeneration industry and worked closely with the Voice newspaper, and that was about providing business advice for people that wanted to start their own businesses, and I must admit that was quite rewarding.
What's your message to people watching this video? What's your message for the future? What's the message for Lambeth Windrush people?
You've got to take on board that we owe it to the wider community to pass the information on. We need to support the Windrush background. I would love to see a proper Windrush memorial in Brixton, in Windrush Square. When I speak to young people, and it sounds silly, but they actually say to me, "What is Windrush?" They don't actually know. These are 20-odd-year-olds who don't understand what Windrush is about.
Has anybody here been in a riot?
Been in a riot?
My name is Siddiqui Harris. I'm the Communications and Engagement Officer for Black Thrive, which is a mental health partnership that exists within Lambeth. Black Thrive is about changing the narrative for black people in Lambeth, trying to make thriving the norm as opposed to it being the exception. We're just trying to make black people in Lambeth to feel like they're winning, to make them start winning, and we do that through various projects.
You're the youngest person that I've interviewed today.
Yeah.
You're obviously from the Windrush generation, but from a younger point of view. Tell us, what's that like for you?
Well, yeah, I'm part of the Windrush generation, or the Windrush legacy, I suppose, because my grandma came over on the Iron Bird I can't remember when she came over though, it was sometime in the 50s. When I look at my grandma and I look at the Windrush generation, the fact that they saw this invite and they came over, and these were pioneers, these were, I say gamblers, and gambler has a negative connotation, but these were people that were taking a risk.
Does anybody here consider themselves to be part of the Windrush generation?
They were going into the unknown. In another scenario, we'd be writing novels and folklore about these people. They braved crossing back through the Atlantic again on the Windrush. They came and built something, built community, they built a togetherness. This is really brave stuff that they were doing because where was the support? It wasn't like they were in a land that belonged to them, therefore they could just connect and feel grounded. They had to build all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, it's an important part of our story as black people in the UK. I'm definitely humbled when I do speak to people from that generation, definitely, because I think they are very brave individuals, really and truly. In my own experience, what I've learned is that a lot of what people did was they came here and they started earning pounds, and then they were using those pounds and sending money back to the Caribbean to help with educating family members over there, paying for medicine and all of this kind of stuff. When you said who felt isolated, everybody got up. I'm hoping that COVID has taught black people is that we have to connect, we have to put the energy into staying together, being together and building this stuff.
What city in England that Haile Selassie lived in when he was staying here?
What city? Yeah, Bristol.
Yes. Bristol. No, actually wrong.
Oh, was it not? No, Bath. It was a B.
My name is Rod Westmass. I am 64 years old, born in Guyana, came to this country just a few months shy of my 3rd birthday. I grew up in Streatham. I went to primary and secondary school. I started in Streatham, but when I reached the age of 13, my parents said, "Nah, you're going to go back to Guyana and do your secondary education. We prefer you go back." So they sent me back to Guyana. I was so happy that they did that because I became aware of who I was. As an infant, when I came, I had no sense of identity. Going back to Guyana allowed me to become Guyanese. My uncle Joshua, just as a sideline, came on the Windrush. He was passenger 501. He was a 28-year-old engineer, mechanic I should say. Arthur Torrington, I don't know if you know Arthur.
Yes.
Arthur's a friend of mine. He would invite me to the events and so forth. But I guess what caught my eye was David Lammy's speech in 2018. When you lie down with dogs, you get fleas. And that did have an impact. My wife is also very interested in this. In fact, she is one of the authors of a study through the University of London on Windrush. Between the two of us, we've interviewed many individuals, we've made recordings, possibly podcasting, but just to hear their stories and to know what they've been through, it's been quite touching. We decided, Juanita and I, my wife and I, to start an initiative where we can gather the Guyanese diaspora once a month in a location where they would come and listen to positive things about Guyana. We would get 3 speakers. They'd each speak for about 20 minutes, be it on the history of architecture in Guyana or the Indian arrival or the contribution from the African populace. Guyana Speak still exists. Been doing that quite successfully, I should add, for a while. Just when COVID hit, we were just about to launch a book. And to show you the book here, you see I'm one of the authors. I wrote one of the chapters in there. You can get that on Amazon if you wish. We were just about to launch that, but we had to postpone it. I reflect upon when I first came here and they would look at us and call us immigrants. Well, we were not immigrants. We migrated to another part of the world of which we're entitled to be. My message, embrace your heritage. Know where you're from. Be proud of who you're from. And I think if there was a highlight of my life, that decision my parents made to send me back to Guyana, to know who I was. Prior to that, I say to people, I was just a little colored boy walking about Streatham, not knowing who I was and being accepted because I was there. But I couldn't really respond in any positive way. My parents weren't really reinforcing my heritage. I had to discover it for myself. Even if you don't choose to go back there to live, contribute in some way. If it's in educating the youth, if it's to go there and start a small business, Anybody who's ever eaten a delicious Guyanese pepper pot? It sounds really nice. It is. It's one of our national dishes.
My name is Edmund Williams. I'm 70 years old. I'm from the beautiful island of Grenada. I came to this country to join my mom, my dad, and my two brothers in 1966. I worked as an engineer until I retired. Engines was my hobby from a very young age, so I got involved in the motor industry, and I stayed in it until I retired.
So tell us a little bit about life here when you were a young person.
When I arrived in this country, the first big surprise for me was the amount of factories, because everywhere you saw so many chimneys. And I said to my brother, because they came to meet me in the airport, I said, boy, England have a lot of factories. In Grenada, if you saw a chimney over any building, it was because it was a factory. But it was cold. The Windrush generation, although we all came from different islands, we had a lot of love and respect for each other. Things were very hard for us as a race, especially for our parents, because our parents was a little bit more humble than we were. We took the mantle and we just took up the things that our parents wasn't fighting for. And most of our anger in this country, it's because of the way we were treated so unfairly. My grandfather fought in 1914-18 World War. He came with the BWIR soldiers. The islands contributed so much to this country from the days of slavery. If you look into it, and the imports they had from the Caribbean islands, their contribution in collections they made around the islands, the gifts they sent to the UK, although they were poor islands, but it was the way they were treated afterwards. How many kids born in this country could tell you that there were soldiers from Africa, the Caribbean, India, that came and fought for this country that has treated them as second-class citizens all their lives and not acknowledging the contribution we have made.
When you hear the term, I'm still here, we're still here, what does that bring up for you?
It brings up the days when we had the NF who thought they sort of ruled, and they even had one of the offices in Bexley Heath. That only got dismantled a few years ago.
What's your thoughts and feelings about the recent treatment of this country to the Windrush generation?
To the Windrush generation? It's absolutely scandalous. I was never expecting this country to turn that way, not towards us, especially the people from the Caribbean, because we contributed so much for the development of this country. And we all came here all feeling British because we all came on the British passport. The thing that hurts most of all is that the people in position and in power, they just seem to let it happen.
Raymond, I'm retired, currently doing volunteer work for different organizations. I came to this country in 1965 to join my parents. My experience is I've spoken to many people. I'm the second generation of West Indies, but from my research, I gather that the people who the first generation who came to this country didn't have a good experience because Jamaica was part of Britain colony at the time. So these people consider this country as their motherland, which turned out to be false.
So how long have you been connected to Lambeth?
I'm not really connected to Lambeth, but more than less a Wandsworth person. I've always come to Brixton a lot because I feel at home in Brixton. Brixton is somewhere that back in the 70s, you find a strong community, and this community was very gel with each other. We were supporting each other.
What would you say has been your highs and lows of your career since you've been here in this country?
Well, I haven't seen much change in terms of where black people are at the moment. You know, we're still at the foot of the ladder. When I was going to school, there's nothing to teach us about our own history. What we learn is from outside by doing our own research to find out about ourselves.
What's your feelings, would you say, about the treatment of
the Windrush generation in terms of the scandal that happened?
The problem is they being misused and abused, and they came here in good faith. So far, the current situation, people has been waiting to be compensated. I have friends who probably spend in legal fee about £60,000, and to know that this country and whatever the government has put up there and that these people has been wrongly accused of not being in this country as people who should be granted the freedom. They have a right to abode, and yet you dismiss these people because the lack of the bureaucracy that concerning these people with the missing information, the papers that would identify them as valid citizens to stay in this country has been thrown away or whatever.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever thought of going to Africa, their ancestors' land, or being there?
My name is Rastafari Bird, Article Bird, all the birds, otherwise known as Audley Davy. I came here in the early 60s, 1964. I was born in the 50s, so that makes me about 68. I came here with the intention to educate myself and improve the structure of my environment. But unfortunately, there were so many obstacles that was in the way that I did not know of when I came here. Racism, ignorance, confusion, and all these things were in the packages that was unexpected.
Tell us a little bit about growing up here then. What was it like for you?
Oh, it was terrible. No dogs, no Irish, no blacks. So they would give you names like Coons, Wogs, and there are so many different names that they labeled us with, till they eventually became half-caste, mixed race, and colored. All these labels did not make sense because we were a race of people that came from somewhere, and they didn't have these names or labels and the race or nations of people that we knew we came from. So the education was limited of who we were.
Does anyone know the philosophy or revolution of Garvey, Marcus Messiah Garvey?
We were exposed to colonial education, which is a miseducation. Didn't give us our history, didn't give us our geography, didn't give us our physics, chemistry, or science. This government has treated our people from the Windrush generation until today very terrible, because we are so sick with the treatment that we're going through traumas, many different type of trauma, post-traumatic slave syndrome trauma. Some of us doesn't even know what the traumas are about, but we feel it. It is in our veins, in our blood. So we will go through all the different type of sickness, arthritis, rheumatism, and the different stress from the past, which comes back to us, and we feel those traumas. Now, with all the treatments that we got, we cannot go anywhere to advance because the system has brainwashed us with its capitalism and religion, which leave us in confusion. The condition of domestication, of staying inside of your quarters, gives you the cramp in your house, give you the stress that you cannot mingle or associate with your people that you know, because of the propaganda. You don't know where there is truth from lies. We need, first of all, to have reparation. Repairing of the body, repairing of the structure, repairing of the mind, repairing of the damage that's already been done. And the damage that is done, some of us are so blind, we cannot see it, we can only feel it. So we need to repair our minds so that the next generation can get out of the trauma and advance. You go for it. His name is Brains. He has an iconic name. If you don't have brains, you won't be able to do nothing. He is a lovely creature. His name, African Grey. He has so much quality and character because if you fall asleep inside in front of him in the city, he will wake you up and make fun of you.
I'm Dawn Hill. I was born in Jamaica. I came to England when I was nearly 17, and I trained as a nurse to start with. Since then, I've had a completely different career. I've lived here now I'm now 81, and I came here when I was 17, 1956. I've been here quite a long time. All my families are in Jamaica. They've never immigrated anywhere. My eldest brother, who's died now, he was sent to England when he was 16. I was sent to England to train as a nurse by my aunt and uncle. My father died when I was 12 and my mother when I was 14. I had a very middle-class upbringing as a cadet trainee nurse, and I went to Leicester College until I was 18. I didn't choose to be a nurse. I never experienced the amount of racism that a lot of people I know do and have experienced in this country. So I wasn't a typical Windrush person in that respect. I met up with all these women, black women, who worked in the hospitals. And in those days, they didn't have central heating in hospitals. They had cold fires, and they tell me that they'd have to be in the wards by 5 o'clock, setting up, stoking the fires, getting the fires ready, and things like that. And they had a really tough time. And these are the women of the Windrush generation. I was a mere onlooker, and I used to talk to them and say, well, how do you manage, and things like that. That was an eye-opener. When I took my first job as a head of personnel in Hackney hospitals, started Black Liners, Arnold Gordon asked me to help him, and I did. And we looked after black people, particularly men, and mostly African at the time, with HIV. And for 10 years I chaired Black Liners. At the same time, when the riots broke out, Len Garrison started Black Cultural Archives and asked me to help him set up the organization, which I did, and I'm still there. Now we are there to promote, celebrate the people of the Windrush generation, black people in general. This whole business about the Windrush scandal has been absolutely shocking. At the BCA, we're running clinics to help. We're very concerned that it's still the case that the hostile environment continues to impede progress with people getting their compensation or even getting their status. And you have to get the status before you can actually apply for compensation.
What comes to mind when you hear the term, I'm still here, we're still here?
I'm still here, I'm 81. The Black Cultural Archives, which started in 1981, is still here. And we will continue to be here and prosper and promote the contribution black people have made. They should be celebrated, and Windrush Day is a celebration.
My name is Stedman Scott. He is co-founder of a FIWI training center based in Brixton Recreation Center. The organization was founded after the 1981 riot, so it's like the phoenix that's risen out of the 1981 ash. During the time my organization has been running, I've got over 20 professional players. I've got players in all different countries.
What would you say about I'm still here, we're still here? What does that mean for you?
Well, to me that is a great thing. I'm still here. We have overcome the system. When we first come here, the system didn't have in place for we to be a part of society. We wasn't a citizen. We thought that we was. We didn't have any rights. It was lie that was telling us. Because I'm one of these persons who has been in this country for quite a long time, over 50 years, I have experienced the real crunch of racism. To reach to a stage now where we see things change, the next step is to create an organization that will help our young people to move forward, and that's what the FIWI is about.
So tell us a little bit about your connection to Windrush and Lambeth.
Well, my generation is the first generation to be educated in this country from the Windrush, because our folks have come there in the 50s, we come in the 60s. We didn't really understand what racism is. Watching your fathers and mother struggling, and you don't fully understand until when you come, even when you're in school, you still don't understand until when you actually come of age. 16, 17, then you start to see different things taking place. There's two different roads, one for the black, one for the white. Where do you go? I've got over, as I said, over 20 professional ball players. The first thing I do, if a young person wants to be a footballer or a boxer, the club I've got in Brixton Recreation Center, if you don't want to be that, don't come into my place. I don't want you to come into my place and sit there wasting your time until when you're 16 and you realize that the system isn't fair. Since I know that, I'm going to prepare you that you have a chance that when you leave school, you're moving into your future.
What's your message to people watching this video?
My message to people that's watching this video, there is nothing in Brixton that represents who we are. It doesn't represent the Windrush. The so-called Windrush Square doesn't represent nothing that is positive of us. The only thing that represents what is positive of the Windrush generation, which people doesn't seem to realize, is Brixton Recreation Center. Because before the Recreation Center, there was no rights for black people here.
Who is it has ever been through physical experiences like, say for argument, through a boxing club, a dancing club, a physical club, etc., etc.?
I'm George Lewis. I'm 70 years of age. I came to the UK 1965 at the age of 14. I am now classified as part of the second Windrush generation.
Is there anyone here that has a friend or relative with the name of George?
Yes, to the brethren letter. Feel letter. Feel letter. Put it here, put it here.
What was it like for you, particularly living here as a youngster coming from the Caribbean?
I was grown up in Jamaica in a rough part, and where I came from, we had to survive. My mom died, so I had to come to England to see my dad. Experience was so different from what I was used to. Sunshine, running up and down, and when I came here, the first 6 months, I just couldn't understand, because I was locked up. I came in the winter, and it was like I came to a different world.
How many people here have done a marathon?
You've done the marathon, George?
Yeah.
The London Marathon?
London Marathon, yeah.
Didn't you still get a medal? Did they give you a medal?
No, when I finished, I just back off into the crowd. So I couldn't take it to London, you understand me? So I just sit.
When you hear the phrase, I'm still here, we're still here, what comes to mind for you?
When I hear it, mother country sent for you, or you come to mother country because of the Commonwealth, etc., etc. When you came here, you think the world is great and big and rosy in England and all this. Yeah, that's what you think as a youth. Because in Jamaica at the time, when I hear about England and all these people in England sending back things to their children, so as a little kid, you get excited, don't you? Yeah. I remember when I received my first couple of packages from my dad coming here, books, pencils, this, that, yeah. I was so excited. Yeah, so, yeah. If only I had the proper teaching of my parents or the support of my parents. But then again, now, as I got older, I got to realize that when my parents come, not all of other generation, not all of them was educated in the sense whereby they could teach us things because they were so busy working in order to keep us going. Because we were young, we didn't understand a lot of the things what they were telling us. The support from them was limited, but at the same time, I understand now that I've grown up what my dad had to go through in order to keep 4 of us. That is a big thing.
Oh my gosh, I just met some amazing people from the Windrush generation. I interviewed them and found out a lot more about their lives, particularly here in Lambeth. I'm just honoured and privileged to learn what they've experienced and what they've gone through and the stories they've shared. This video, I hope that you enjoy it and it tells us something about the next generation. I'm Tony Seeley, thanks for watching.